Welcome back to another episode of My First Car Podcast. I think it's the 15th episode, and I believe it's the very first episode without our friend Jeff. Jeff is not here with us today, but we have somebody taking his place. Kind of. We're kind of interviewing him, not really taking his place. The pressure's on, Serge.
Hello.
This
no
is
pressure.
This
no
is
pressure
my cousin Sergio, and the reason we have him on today is because he's got a ridiculous car history. Before we get into that, I want to just let everybody know myfirstcar.net. Go over there, click on all the links, become a patron if you'd like. Would really appreciate it. You can get access to our sweet Patreon account where you can ask us questions and stuff and interact with us on a regular basis. And then you can listen on Google Play Music or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter or any social media place you can think of. We're there. Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all the things. And all that information is on myfirstcar.net. Serge, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you for having me.
No, not a problem. This is gonna be, did you hear who was our last guest?
I did not. Sadly enough, I haven't listened to a couple of episodes now. It's been a little bit busy for me the last little while. So.
It's Christmas time. Everybody's busy this time of year. Our last guest was an astronaut. Terry Virts. This guy was actually in space, and he had a pretty cool car history too, actually. I think you would have been proud. He had a Mustang in there. He had a Plymouth Laser in there.
A Laser?
Yeah.
My kind of guy. I'm going to go back and listen to it as soon as we're done recording.
He had a Honda Accord.
An Accord? Well, that's interesting.
He had a very interesting mix, for sure.
I will say.
So when Jeff and I usually do this show, we always start with sightings, and I don't know if you have any sightings. We probably should have talked about this before we started recording, but I do have a sighting. So while you're thinking, if you've seen anything on the road recently that you'd like to share, I'll just tell my story. I was driving into downtown Toronto, and people on the podcast, people who listen to the podcast, know that I'm a fan of old Land Rovers. I saw an old Land Rover Discovery convertible on the Gardner.
On the Gardner?
Yeah, just like rolling.
Well, it sort of fits the highway because the highway never moves, and that Land Rover can't get to more than 10 or 20 kilometers an hour, so it fits the highway just perfect.
Yeah, it wasn't moving very fast.
That is such a bizarre vehicle.
I know, and it was packed with people. Packed with people.
That is so bizarre. I don't think of all the years I've ever seen one.
No, I don't think I've seen a convertible Discovery, at least in Toronto. I think I've seen them in Portugal, if I'm not mistaken. But very first one I've seen here. And it was packed with people. I thought they were shooting a movie or something. Like, I was looking around for like a camera car because it's not a car you see often. And on top of that, I mean, it's December here in Toronto. It is cold.
Right. So
and this guy was driving down, top off, convertible Land Rover Discovery.
I've often said, people with convertibles are very strange. I mean that with all due respect, because I'm sure there's listeners, out there that have convertibles, and it's just really bizarre. Like they seem to pull the top down, like the strangest conditions. Like you've got, let's say a summer day, it's like scorching hot. They've got the top up with the air conditioning on.
Of course, yeah.
But then you got a fall day or a winter day that's like, -1 or 2, and they've got their tops down. I don't understand. I'm not a convertible guy, so.
Me neither, actually. I think all cars look kind of silly in convertible format.
I'm with you.
I've always heard that convertibles are like people who have pools. Like, you use it a couple times, but then you'll just forget about it and never use it again. And I feel like maybe that's the way convertible people are, too.
I think it's the same thing with sunroofs. It's sort of the same thing.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time you opened up your sunroof?
That's a really good point. I think maybe 2 or 3 times this summer. That's it.
There you go. Same thing with me. Huh. So it's kind of the same thing. Like you go and buy a vehicle, it's like, well, it doesn't have a sunroof, forget it. And it's like,
and then you never end up using it anyway.
Exactly.
So there's your tip of the day, folks.
Nice.
If you're looking for a car, don't even bother with the sunroof because you're not going to use it anyway, you idiots.
No,
I don't mean to call them idiots. They're not idiots. Do you have a sighting, by the way?
Sightings.
I know you sent me something the other day.
Yeah. Actually, funny enough, out of all the cars, I can't even believe this. I see so much stuff on the road. So a couple of weeks ago, I was out on a sales call with one of my colleagues, and I was coming down Alness in Steeles, I believe, which is like Steeles in Dufferin area. It was an Eagle Talon. It was a black Eagle Talon, just like the one I used to own.
Oh,
the
boy.
91. I know, I couldn't believe it.
Oh, boy.
I said, maybe I should chase this guy down and see if he wants to sell it. You know what I mean?
Just like chase him down and ask him to sell you his car.
We get to a parking lot. I was just gonna block him in. You know what I mean? Like he's committed a crime or something. You know?
This is why I really wanted Jeff to be here today, because you guys have a common love for Eagle Talons. It just means you got to come back some other time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm always up for it.
You also sent me a link, a classified link to an Eagle Talon that the guy was asking $7,500 for.
Which apparently is a pretty good deal, because he was initially asking, I think, $11,000.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I can initially ask $1 million for any of my cars, so I guess it is kind of a discount.
Yeah, and I ended up messaging the guy anyway, because the one thing that kind of irks me is when people post ads on Kijiji or could be Craigslist or wherever. If you're going to list something, try to be truthful. Mm-hmm. And the guy kept saying that the vehicle is bone stock. Well, a bone stock vehicle doesn't have an aftermarket boost gauge where the heater controls are located.
Used to be, yeah.
And it's got an aftermarket intake, so
not bone stock.
It's not bone stock. So he kept coming back and said something like, if you don't know anything about DSMs or something and about stock, then don't message me. And I was like, okay,
boy.
It's just one of those guys. So I kind
of he doesn't know who he's talking about.
No, yeah, exactly. I've only had probably 7 or 8 of these things. I know them inside out, but sadly enough. You know what though? All joking aside, I think it is probably the only, probably close to original Talon that I've seen ever, with 105,000 kilometers, and it's mint. There's no rust, like the body's straight, et cetera, et cetera.
So here's the thing about those 105,000 kilometers. I dug a little deeper, and I looked at his other ads, and he's selling a gauge cluster with 150,000 kilometers on it. Yeah, well, and he's selling other Eagle Talon parts. So if this thing is bone stock, he must have at least one other Eagle Talon that he's removing parts from.
Yeah, I could believe it. You know what? I've often thought about it. I mean, I've often said, you know what? Should I pick one up? Should I, maybe not? You know what? The truth of the matter is, you can't go back. As nice as they were, I mean, for what they were back in the day, you got to remember, man, like 195 horsepower turbo by today's standards is nothing. No. Christ, my Altima it's 172 horsepower, and it gives me 1,000 kilometers to a tank. You know what I mean? And it's faster than that thing. So I don't know. I don't think I could ever go back. And looking at it now, I don't think any of them are good. I mean,
good. I'm glad to hear you say that.
The second generations are probably just as bad, if not worse, than the first gens. Anyway,
at least the second gen. Wait, the second gens were the ones, the nice round ones.
They were, but it was 97 and 98. Because you got to remember, 95 when they first introduced that body style. First of all, they looked ugly. They did something to the front end. I don't know what the heck they were thinking. And then they had all sorts of issues with the engine block. Had the crank walk, if you remember, because I had that issue on my, I think 95 or 96, the one I had my Eclipse. And so they're just not good cars by any means. But anyway, I did message the guy back. I said, well, you've got quite the attitude, for selling a vehicle. So I hope that you can leave it sitting in your lawn, because it'll make a nice Christmas lawn ornament for next year.
It's red.
It is red.
You just need some. Oh, the grass is green. So there you go. There's your Christmas theme.
Oh God. Anyway about these. I just dropped the microphone there.
That's fine.
Enough about these Talons here.
Well, not enough about the Talons, because we're gonna get into your car history, and there's gonna be a few of those
unfortunately
scattered in there. So let's start with not your first one. Let's start with the most recent, and then work our way back to the first one.
Most recent.
Yeah. Well, what are you driving today?
Well, I've got a 2011 Genesis Coupe.
Okay.
So that's my most recent. Obviously, I still have it.
And that's the 6-cylinder.
Yeah, that's a 6-cylinder. Prior to that, I haven't owned anything in a long time. I think my last vehicle, really, I'm just talking like sports cars and stuff I drive on the weekends. My last one was my 96 or 97 Mitsubishi Eclipse Turbo. The copper one. I think you remember.
Oh yeah, I remember that car. It had a body
Yeah.
kit and everything on it.
Yeah, I sold that, I think, just after I got married.
So what actually, back to the Genesis though, like what made you get, because you were looking for a car, I know, and then all of a sudden you decided that you were going to get a Genesis. We went out to look at some Mustangs and
I know. You
and
know
then
what?
all of a sudden Genesis.
Yeah. Well, my brother-in-law kind of brought it up. We were talking about Mustangs one day, and he goes, why not look at the Genesis and stuff? I said, the Genesis? I go, why aren't they like 2-liter turbos? Like, I don't want anything with turbos. And he's like, no, they've got like these V6s and stuff. So I started doing like a little bit of research on it, and I found them to be really, really, adequately priced. You get a lot of car for the money, really, and they're really, really nicely put together. So when I looked at everything, I wanted something older, but I'm also the type of guy, you know how I am. I like to get in. I like the air conditioning to work. I like to be comfortable. I like to make sure that when you turn the key, it starts and everything works. And I just don't think you're going to get that with an older vehicle. So, yeah. So that's the reason behind it. Took me a while to find the right one, but I did. And it's going on 2 years now.
Yeah, we actually went out to look. Now that I think about it, we actually did go out to look at a couple other Genesises.
We did.
One of them was the one at the dealership, which was nice driving car, really loud exhaust, and then the other one was the other that young guy was selling it. They were both 6 cylinders.
Yes, they were all 6s. Yeah, that's what I was looking for in particular.
Yeah.
It's a very underrated vehicle, and I think the shameful thing about the not the vehicle itself, I think it's the brand, and I think when people, it's kind of funny because people that look at my car, they'll look at it from the rear, like the trunk lid, and they'll look at the Genesis logo and they'll be like, what the heck is this? and then you look at the front end, and the grill, it still has the Hyundai logo. So I think that logo kind of diminishes the vehicle a little bit, because Hyundais are just, they're Hyundais. I mean, no disrespect to anyone driving a Hyundai.
Yeah, they've got the reputation.
They do, even though they've come a long way. So you change the logo to a Genesis logo, and automatically changes people's perception on the vehicle. But I like it a lot. I think it's fast for a stock vehicle, very well put together, to the point where I followed some of the forums, the Genesis forums, and it's almost like the Korean technicians, I guess you could say, kind of put a bet on how they couldn't. Some people were saying that Hyundai can never build like a nice sports car, so they sort of like took it upon themselves to kind of put a little bit of a wager on it. Yeah, and so they built this phenomenal vehicle, and was in production for about, I would say, up to about 2015, 2016, and then just like that, they killed it. So,
well, then they replaced it with the Veloster.
Oh God, yeah, just I don't know what they were thinking with that thing, man.
Talk about sporty.
Yeah, sporty, all right. No, they weren't very good either. They were very good cars. So, nice to see though. I follow, some of the Hyundai stuff, and I think what they've done now is they've changed their strategy a little bit. They've opened up their Genesis division again, although like the coupes are dead, but they still have these sedans, and they're marketing as a higher end, brand, if you will. So good for them.
Yeah. And then you said before that was the Eclipse. I think you're forgetting something.
What did I have in between?
Oh my goodness. I know your car history better than you do.
I can't. Well, it was so long ago.
The clue is it had T-tops.
Oh, that thing.
Wait, the what?
It was a 91. It was a 91 Pontiac Trans Am.
The 91 Pontiac Trans Am. Yes, sir.
Oh my God, that thing! You know what? That thing was a beauty, man. I miss that car.
Here's the funny thing about that car is that in the ad that you so we went to look at it together.
Yeah.
It was sitting in a parking lot at a mechanic shop, and in the ad it said, "Never seen winter."
Oh.
Well, when we went to look at it, it was the dead of winter. It was under like an inch of snow or like a couple inches of snow. It was freezing out. Like, it's definitely seen winter.
I was going to say, you know, when I asked the guy, he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I keep it in the shop all the time, but I had to throw it outside because, you know, I ran out of room." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, nice seal stock there, buddy."
Yeah, no, it definitely had seen winter, and you had that. You didn't have that thing for very long either.
No, and the only reason why I sold it was because I made good money on it. Because you got to remember, like, I picked up that car for not a lot of money. I did have to put some work into it, a little bit more than what I had anticipated. And it was nice. I mean, you know, I drove it around, and I always got the thumbs up. You know, people seem to really, you know, appreciate those older vehicles. But, you know, it's one of those things, you know, it's you drive it a few times and it's still a GM and it's still a 91 and things clunk and things break. And it's just kind of like, okay, you know, like, this is kind of cool, but, you know, maybe it's time to go. So I think I only had it for one summer. So.
It was a bit of a rattle box.
It was. Well, but that's the problem with those old cars. Even the Mustangs, you know, that's why they call them rattle boxes, the Fox bodies. Like, they're just horrible, you know, but, you know. People don't buy them, you know, to with that in mind, they just buy them for the nostalgia, I think.
Yeah. So before that car, was that the Eclipse then?
So I had the Eclipse. Before the Eclipse, I got the Eclipse, and before the Eclipse, I had the 97 Talon.
The 97 Talon, the silver one?
No, it was the all-wheel drive, the red one.
Oh, man, okay.
Now, I don't know if you remember that car. That car I bought, and I literally didn't even make it to my house. I sent it straight to, you know, Helder's place.
Oh, yeah, to get a few modifications done.
And that car was just insane. I spent about $3,000 on it. I still remember. And I went with big turbo. Like, I did injectors. I did water, you know, the methanol injection kit. I did, everything to it. And that thing was like scary, scary, scary fast. Probably
Did you end up tracking it at all?
I did. In the day that I tracked it, I had the DSM link hooked up to it, and I couldn't get the turbo to spool. There was something going on, and even with because you got to remember, I think it was a GT35 at the time, and it just took a really, really long time to spool. And even then, I ran, I think, a 12.1 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, just like screwing around. So that thing was actually, that car was pretty scary. Like, I had it one night. I had dropped off, you know, my wife, always girlfriend at the time, at home, and I was coming home. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. My parents, you know, well, we lived in Thornhill. There was a guy in a Honda Civic, like, you know, trying to tease me and stuff, and I was just like, I was tired. I just wanted to get home, and I think I was in like fourth gear, and I dropped it down to third, and I stomped on it, and by the time that turbo spooled, I looked at the speedo. I think I went from like, I don't know, like 80 to like 170 or 180. Like, it just buried the needle. It was just stupid fast.
We don't advocate for speeding.
No. This was in my younger years.
He was a young, silly man.
Not very intelligent, not at all.
But yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I still miss that car. So I sold that car to a guy who literally wrecked it in less than a month. So
nice.
Blew the motor and got into a fight with his girlfriend and smashed her against the pole, and that was the end of that car.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of details.
Yeah. Before that, I had I think was the 19. Remember that Mustang we picked up in Chatham, Ontario?
Was it in Chatham?
Windsor.
Windsor, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that was an awesome road trip.
That was an amazing road trip, and that car was a steal, man. Like, I remember getting that car for like next to nothing. Wish I still had it, because that was probably one of the last original Fox.
Oh yeah, and you would have made a killing now if you sold it. Those things are climbing like crazy in resale prices.
Expensive. Yeah, very expensive.
And that was like pretty much stock, that one.
Yeah, I did nothing to that car. I think the only thing that car had done to it was a stereo.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just the stereo.
Yeah, which I hated. I wanted to rip it out and put the original Ford stereo in.
Didn't you even buy one?
I think I did. I don't know if I ever installed it or not, but I did buy an original one for it.
And then all of a sudden that was gone.
Yes, I sold that one. What else did I have before the Mustang? I had I believe the silver Talon, the 98.
That was the non-turbo?
That was a non-turbo.
Non-turbo that he bought from his buddy.
Yeah. Before that, I had my 91.
91. Was that the black one?
Yeah, the one
Oh
I
my
missed the
gosh.
most. Yeah, so
That one was the one that left me stranded on the side of the road when we went to see a Jays game.
I know that. Well, it left me stranded a few times. So here's a little story for you guys. You know, and I believe in karma in some sense. So that car has got a bit of a history to it. And I think out of all my cars that I've owned, I think that one kind of, it's special. I mean, I had it for a long time. So just to backtrack a little bit, before I bought that black car, that black Eagle Talon, I had a 1990 Eagle Talon turbo front wheel drive. And I hated the thing because it was always constantly breaking down. Surprise, surprise.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I was driving through, I think it was DuPont in Dufferin, and there was a car dealership. It's no longer there, but it was in front of the Galleria Mall, and they had this beautiful black Eagle Talon sitting in the showroom. And I walked in, and it was a 1991 with 200,000 kilometers, and they won $11,000 for it.
Wow.
And I said, these people are on crack. So I said, no, this is not happening. So years later, I got into a little bit of trouble. And again, when you're not so intelligent and you do stupid things, you lose your license and you lose the ability to drive. So I went without a vehicle for probably 3 years. I had to take the bus to get to work and all this good stuff. So I finally pulled my money together to buy a vehicle. And I was dating this girl at the time. And she says, well, I have a friend of mine that's selling a car. Only asking a couple $1,000. Would you be interested? I said, okay, well, I'll have a look at it. So I went to meet the guy, and he opens the garage. It's Black Eagle Talon. I go, oh, no. I said, no. I said, there's no way in hell that I'm buying this thing. I said, no, absolutely not. So I got talking to the guy, and he says, I bought this car, and I've had it for less than a year, and, I'm selling it. And I said, well, how much did you pay for this car? He goes, I paid something like $11,000 for it.
Oh, it was the car from the dealership.
It was a car from the dealership. And I didn't really actually until I bought the vehicle. So I bought the car, and I was cleaning it out, and I saw the original bill of sale inside the glove box. And it was the same dealership, the same vehicle. And I didn't pay $11,000 for it. I paid $2,000 for it. So, felt sorry for the guy. But
wow, that's quite the savings.
It is. And so that car always kind of held a little, little special place. I ran it stock for a very long time. To get to work, everything worked on it. Air conditioning, cruise control, even though it had 220,000 kilometers. But never let me down. And then I modded it. And, it sat in the garage more than it ran. But that's the fun part.
You had, man, I feel like you've had, I'm not sure. So when did the red Integra come into play? Because you had
the red. Yeah, I've had so many vehicles.
You've had a lot of cars.
Yeah. Well, the red Integra was kind of my work vehicle. I had that thing. Well, you got to remember, like in between, I had a couple Pontiac. I had 2003, I think. The blue with the tan interior, just a GT.
That's right. Is that the one where the seats would the heated seats just wouldn't turn off?
Oh God, yes. Don't even. Oh God.
Oh no, I want to get into it. What happened with that?
Oh my God, that car was a disaster, man. So that thing, well, basically, like the relay went on it, and so I'm driving to Oshawa at the time, and I'm trying to shut off the heated seat, and I'm like it's just like burning me, man. Like it was that hot, and the switch wasn't working, and it got so damn hot. I was wearing a leather jacket at the time, and I thought, okay, if I just put my jacket, and kind of in between, and it'll be fine. And no, it was like scorching hot, point where it was even like the leather on the jacket was literally melting. It was that hot, and I couldn't believe it. And I ended up going to the GM, and ended up fixing it. I ended up being a stupid relay, but that car was just a disaster. I hated that thing.
Good old GM.
Yeah, but I did own a 2000 I can't remember what it was, 2004 maybe, or 5, I think.
I think it was the same year as my Saab, and mine was a 2004.
Yeah, I think so. It was the GTP, the supercharged.
Yeah, the silver one.
Yeah, that car was actually good. I had it for a little while. I used it every day. Never had any issues at all. It was quite fast actually too, with the supercharger for what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I was never
and
a fan of the Grand Prix styling myself.
Yeah, they weren't the styling. I'm not a big fan either. That car had a huge flaw. It was a low roof line, and if you're tall like me or like you or anybody for that matter, like it's just very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad loves them, and my dad just gave up his. His was a GT, same year as the one I had. So
And
not supercharged, and it's
you're
got
how many kilometers?
377,000 kilometers.
377. I'm going to convert that into miles for our American listeners.
Yeah.
And he just gave that up?
He just gave it up, and not because he wanted to, still runs fine. It's just so we convinced him that it's time to let go and get him into something else.
That's 234,000 miles.
That is a lot of kilometers.
For those of you who still use that system. That's crazy. Yeah. That is a lot.
Yeah. So my Integra, going back to the Integra, somewhere along between the Grand Prix, I believe. And that thing was it was a nice car, but, too many kilometers, drank a lot of oil, power steering was leaking. It was just a mess, so I had to let it go.
Poor Integra. Did that thing have a sunroof?
It did, and it rusted like crazy, and it would leak inside, so I had to duct tape the the rust.
Duct tape the rust.
Oh God! Well, they weren't very good vehicles. Like if you remember the old Hondas back in the day, like they were just rust buckets.
Yeah, that's true. The Integras, though, that was the squared headlight Integra, correct?
It was the square, yes.
The Type R version of those cars was actually really, really nice.
Yeah, that was the later years, I think, the later version.
Mine the Type R's was the circle headlights, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Mine was the 92, just a regular GS, and I wanted to get a GSR or something, but they were so expensive, so I figured the next closest thing would be to just put like a cold air intake on it and just floor it on the 401, and you hear the fake VTEC. All the things you do when you're on a budget.
Yeah, I kind of like that car, actually, the red Integra.
It was a good car. It served me well.
Did you have because you used to put sound system. You used to do a lot of wiring, too, for all the sound systems.
Back in the day, I did, yeah.
Did all your cars have systems? I know like your Grand Prix and stuff didn't, but I'm sure your Talons and stuff did.
My black Talon did. That was probably my last ever systems. But like all the vehicles I had prior to that, like I had a couple of Mustangs, and I had that White Eagle Talon I mentioned had a sound system as well. So yeah, I was big into the sound systems back in the day, particularly my Mustang, like the 80, I think it was an 89 LX hatchback model. Mm-hmm. That thing had a pretty ridiculous sound system.
Okay, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves now, actually. Yeah. Where did we leave off? We left off with the 91 black Talon.
Yes.
Okay, so before that, what was it?
Before the Talon. Okay, so before that one, I had the white Talon.
See, that one I don't remember.
No, I didn't have it for very long.
Yeah.
And that car there, I didn't have it for very long. I think maybe a year or so. It was that thing was just a disaster. Like everything was always breaking and stuff.
I'm sensing a theme with your cars.
Oh yeah,
a lot of disasters.
So I'm trying to think now. Before the white Talon, what did I have? Yeah, so before the White Eagle Talon, I had my 89 LX.
You had, before the white Talon, you had what?
The 89 Mustang LX.
What color was that one?
It was white.
The white. See, I think I do remember that one.
You probably do. I had that car for a while.
Yeah.
That car made me a lot of money in illegal street racing back.
I mean, no money was made in any illegal street racing. Actually, I mean, that'd be kind of cool to talk about. I doubt a lot of people who listen to us have heard somebody who actually did it back in the day talk about it. So if you want to get into that without incriminating yourself, nobody knows your last name. It's fine.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things you look back at now and you say to yourself, like, what the hell was I thinking? But I think, the heat of the moment type of thing, and you just kind of go with it. So I had that car, like I said, I had that car for a long time, and there was a guy, I used to hang out. There used to be a little place down at Sinclair and Weston Road. We used to hang out, and there used to be this guy, I forget his name now, but he had a big yellow Camaro. I think it was a 1969 Camaro or something. The guy used to tease me all the time. He's like, what do you got under that 5-liter there? That thing is weak, and the Camaro's going to walk all over you, and this and that. And so, one day we're up at Pine Valley and Highway 7 there. And there was a stretch of road at the time. This is just, I think north of the 407, just before it got built. And a buddy of mine is like, listen, man, you can take him. Put a couple $100 on the line, and you know what, you can take that guy, all day long. So that's kind of how it started. So we ended up just having a friendly street race, and I ended up beating his ass pretty bad, put him back in his place, and sort of like, I didn't do it full time. It was more of like a Saturday night type of thing, come back from the nightclub or whatever, or just hang out with a couple of buddies, just have a couple of drinks, and sometimes you just sat there and like 1, 2 in the morning, just relaxing, having a coffee, watching the street races, and very different than today, obviously.
Oh no, there's no way you get away with anything like that today.
No, and you got to remember, like back then, it was different. We had spotters at the end of the street. We had spotters at the beginning. You know what I mean? The police knew what was going on, but 9 times out of 10, they kind of turned a blind eye because, it wasn't really a big thing. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it in the short little while that I did street race the car. I mean, that car, did quite well. I think in all the races, the only time I got my ass handed to me was by a 1987 Buick Grand National.
Really?
That thing was just nasty.
I love the GNXs so much.
A beautiful car. And I knew the guy he was very nice, and he goes, you want to go at it? I said, how many car lengths you gonna give me? And he goes, oh, come on. He goes, you got a 5-liter, like you should be, you should be neck and neck. I said, well, I'm gonna give it all, but I said, I think, by the time we hit third, fourth gear, I think, you'll be long gone. And that's exactly what happened. Like, I actually pulled away from him, but by the time I hit fourth gear,
yeah,
that's it. My car had nothing else left, because you got to remember, like, my car at the time, if memory serves me correctly, I had, just simple bolt-ons. It was headers, exhaust, off-road H-pipe, gears, that sort of thing. Right?
What year around with this? I'm trying to figure out if this would have been before, because I have a theory. that a lot of the whole car culture thing either got started or at least got a huge boost from the first Fast and the Furious movie. Now, was this before that or after?
Way before.
Okay.
Way before. Yeah, no, this, it doesn't happen anymore, but I remember like nights going into, again, Pine Valley and Highway 7. I think that the restaurant's still there. Anybody that's familiar with the area, Texas Pit, they used to be kind of the hot spot, and everybody just met there, just car guys, man, open up the hood and just talking and stuff. And then, you're relaxing, and then 1 o'clock hits, and it's like, okay, boys, let's go. And you're following everybody, and that's when the street races start. And I'll tell you, man, I mean, there was nights I come home with a few $100 in my pocket. My mom would go do laundry the following day, and she'd think I was, she thought I was selling drugs, because she's like, well, what's all this money, in your pockets you're selling? And it's just like, no, it's not. Don't worry.
And in all reality, what you were doing is probably way more dangerous than selling drugs.
Yeah, definitely. But the rush was amazing.
Yeah. And so would the rush to the hospital be?
That's another story. That's another story. I almost ended up there with another Mustang of mine, but that's another story. But that white Mustang, was unbelievable. That I tortured that car so badly. That thing never said boo.
Good.
Just amazing.
That's good. And, good old Ford craftsmanship.
Yep. And I sold it because I was dating a girl at the time. Your car is comfortable and it's loud and obnoxious. It doesn't have air conditioning, So I went out and I bought a 1990 Eagle Talon front-wheel drive, where the AC did not work.
Front-wheel drive.
I didn't know any better, but what I did is I went to my local sticker guy to print an all-wheel drive sticker, and I put her on the side skirts. Nobody knew the difference.
There you go. You practically have all-wheel drive.
There you go. Oh, the things
so you did. Sold that car because a girl made you?
Yeah, well, it was a girl I liked a lot at the time, and But you know what? Truth be told, like, I actually didn't mind the car, because you got to remember, like, and probably the listeners are probably wondering, like, how do you go from a Mustang to an Eagle Talon? Like, my cousin at the time, my cousin Rick, had a 1991 Plymouth Laser non-turbo. and he loved my Mustang. So every Saturday night, either if I was going out or not, he'd just call me up. He goes, "Listen, can I borrow your car?" And I'm like, "Why you got to borrow my car for?" Because I want to take your car. I like your car. I'm like, "Okay, so leave me your shit box. Like just leave it there in case I got to go out." So one day I ended up having to go out. So I figured he left me the keys, and I took it for a drive. And he phones me up Sunday and he goes, "Hey, are you going to return my car?" And I go, "Not really." And he's like, "What do you mean not really?" So this is actually quite comfortable. It's got air conditioning. It's nice. It's sporty. And that's how I started kind of looking into the whole Talon thing. And that's how I ended up with, the fascination. So there's
Is
a
this
little bit
the
of a link
same
there.
cousin that ended up buying a Porsche 944?
Yeah, my cousin Rick. Oh, God, the Porsche 944. Oh my God, that thing.
I've heard that was a bit of a reliable vehicle.
That my cousin tortured that car, man. So he went in to buy a motorcycle, and he's a motorcycle guy, and he actually ended up buying the Porsche for some reason. And I tell you, man, we had nights where he tortured that thing like donuts and just abused the crap out of the car and power shifting it, and that car never said boo, man. The only time that it finally gave up on him is he decided to take it out on I think it was one winter, and he caught some black ice. Yeah, and he couldn't steer clear of the pole, man. The car spun around and just basically took out the whole rear end. So that was it for that car. But yeah,
that sucks. See, that's funny that you say that, because all I've heard about Porsche 944 is that they're unreliable. But it's good. He found a good one, I guess.
No. You know what? I think the turbo model.
Sorry, what? Hold on, you're cutting out a little bit there.
Yeah, no, I was saying perhaps the turbo models could be unreliable, but I think just the regular supercharged models, like the regular 944, if you will, I think they're fine, because he had one, and he never even did any maintenance to that thing, man. Like, he barely changed the oil on it. I'm serious. Like, it was just like, there was times like I look at that car and I go, "Dude, how's this thing still going?" And he's like, "I don't know, man. It just goes."
Maybe that's the key. You got to abuse it. Maybe it likes a little abuse.
Yeah, he was pretty hard on his cars, but
okay. Back to you anyway. So, before we left out the white Mustang.
Yes.
So what did you have before that?
What did I have? So the white Mustang.
Okay, hold on. This is a little bit weird, because I know you, and I've been we're cousins, so I've seen all these cars. Didn't you at some point also have a black Trans Am?
Well, I was gonna get to that. Like, I'm sort of working backwards rather than.
Oh, was that before the Mustang?
Yeah, there's a bit of a gap there between the Mustang and my previous car. So,
okay.
I went actually driving. I went without driving for a while because I had gotten into a pretty severe accident. Probably a couple of years before the white Mustang, and I didn't want to see a Mustang as long as I lived. I guess the connection there between the Trans Am and the Mustang was, I'll get to the Trans Am in a little bit, but I had sold the Trans Am because I always wanted to buy a Mustang. And so I searched, and I was supposed to go buy, I think, a trunk model. It was an 87 trunk, 5-liter. And I got there, and the car was just like idling really crazy and everything. And the guy said to me, he goes, "Oh, I could fix it." And I said, "No, you know what? I'm not interested. Like, the car just doesn't seem to work fine. Like, I'm not really interested in any of this." And he had a beautiful 88 yellow GT Cobra sitting there. And he goes, "It's my brother's car. We're going to be selling it if you're interested." So anyway, long story short, I ended up buying the yellow GT. And I still hold the record in Toronto today for owning a Mustang less than 24 hours and wrapping it around a pool. So that car, I drove it around Friday night. I bought it on a Friday. I drove it around, fully insured, plates, everything good. And then Saturday morning, I decided to take it to work. And I got a little bit too brave under wet conditions and took a turn a little bit too fast, and the car spun and hit a pole. And it looked fine, from the driver's side, but from the passenger side, it looked like a banana. So,
oh man, it was yellow too.
Yeah, and it was yellow too. And I ended up with 4 stitches in my forehead and people around me screaming and this, that, and the other. So from that day on, I swore off Mustangs, and I said, never want to see another
Yeah,
goddamn
'cause
Mustang.
it was totally the Mustang's fault.
It was definitely the Mustang's fault. Well, it had no traction control. If it had traction control, like so.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So where's all the airbags and everything, traction controls we have nowadays? None of this would have happened.
Right.
So yeah, I swore off Mustangs for a long, long time, and it took me a while until I finally bought that '89 LX, which I had for a long time. But going back to your question about the Trans Am, the Trans Am was my first car.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That was the first one?
Yes, it was my first car. And there's also a story behind that car. I initially, so me and my cousin, we had this thing where we just wanted to buy a car just to screw around with and kind of create or recreate the Dukes of Hazzard,
Oh my God.
by placing by placing 2 planks, on top of some concrete blocks and just, floor the car.
Get out. You did not.
This is the reason why we bought it. So we bought that car in the rear.
Hold on, you cut out again. You bought the car what?
Yeah, so I bought the car for $600.
Okay.
It was an '84 Trans Am, 5-speed, no options. And it had been, I think the guy mentioned that he took a corner too quickly and he hit I think a newspaper box, and the whole back was all smashed in, like the rear quarter and stuff. So I told my cousin, I said, we can essentially try to recreate the Dukes of thing, but we got to make it look half decent at least, right? We can't just be jumping, over.
No, you can't. Of course not. You can't be jumping stuff with a beat up car. No.
So that car, we spent day and night after school up until the hours of the night fixing that car. And my cousin was mechanically inclined at the time. I wasn't. And try to put everything together. There was a couple of hoses and a couple of things in the engine bay, needed obviously looking after. And after spending probably 2 months working on this thing, we finally had a chance to turn the key and take the car out for its, intended purpose. Okay. And lo and behold, took it out of the garage. He floored it, and as soon as he hit second gear, the transmission dropped on the ground. So we're sitting there, and we're like, okay, how does this happen? So obviously there was bolts missing in the transmission. And I said, well, you know what? This late in the game, we put so much time and effort into it. We might as well fix it. So I ended up fixing the car, and I probably spent way too much money on it, probably more than that car is ever going to be worth anyway. But I fixed it up pretty nicely. I painted it black. I did the blackout lights like the Knight Rider, Trans Am. And did a massive sound stereo on it, put a big speaker system in it. And, and I had that car.
You had that car. You had that car how long?
I had that car for many years. And funny enough, the T-tops leak like crazy. Every time I'd go in. Oh, it was horrible. I'd go into if it rained, it leaked. If I went into, car wash, it just poured. It was horrible. But even with the transmission fixed, that car was never the same. It would basically leak oil. So because it was a manual transmission, I had to keep going back to the mechanic, and they had to inject this, special bottle with this neck to try to refill the transmission. It was just and it was a common thing. I'd have to go back because it leaked that much, right?
How often?
Every month, at least.
Every month.
It was just bad, but it did take a beating. I put that car through hell as well. And, the only reason why I sold it was to buy, that yellow Mustang.
Huh. Yeah. And that was your very first car?
That was my very first car, yeah. It was.
Interesting.
It was. Still miss it to today.
So,
there's a car, yeah, there's one that's missing in there somewhere. I know that.
There's a few that's missing in there. Didn't you also have, at one point you had a Hyundai Winter Beater?
Oh, man, the Hyundai. My dad killed that. I bought that car for $300 off of my cousin.
Your cousin has a lot to do with your car history.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, we were separate twins back in the day. But, he sold me that car for $300, and that car was the biggest piece of crap ever, man. Like, it was just rusty and everything. But you know what? Like, it just wouldn't die. And so my dad had a Pontiac 6000 at the time. You remember that stupid silver looking thing.
Yeah.
And he had this habit where he'd get up in the morning to go to work, and the door locks on his car would freeze. So he couldn't obviously get to work. So he'd take my car, right? So one day, he'd go out, he'd start the car, he'd start my Hyundai, let it warm up. But you got to remember, the car was carburetor. So there's a choke on it, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm sleeping, and he comes barging in the room, and he goes, "Your car's on fire." And I'm like, what do you mean the car's on fire? And I look out the window, and there's flames shooting out my hood, man. And I'm like, what the hell? So I get outside with a bucket of water. I'm trying to toss water on this thing. It's like pitch dark. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning. Don't know what's going on. And during the light of day, I go back out to inspect the damage. And there's like, all kinds of melted stuff, in the engine bay.
Oh, man.
All the heater vents are like damaged. They're all burnt and melted. And I'm like, I told him, so what the hell did you do to it? And he's like, I think the choke might have got stuck. And I go, the choke might have got stuck. I said, okay, well, that's the end of this thing.
That's what year was that Hyundai? Because I can't believe that thing had a choke in it.
Yeah, it was a 1985. Get this, it gets better. That car, literally, even though it was melted to crap, it actually started. That thing was running on 3 cylinders.
Wow.
That car was running on 3 cylinders. So I took it into the mechanic, and he said, you know what? Just drive it because, like, what are you going to do? You're going to spend money on this thing. So we, God, I ended up having it for, I don't remember, a very long time.
Was that the Pony?
Nah, it wasn't the Pony. It was the Excel.
Okay.
And I had it, and the only reason why I ended up selling it was because it was so rusted that the floorboards had actually given way. So one day I was driving, and it was like the Flintstones. My feet just fell through.
Oh, my God.
And, so I called the tow truck guy, to come pick it up, and he tried flooring it to see if he would kill the engine. And the only reason why the engine quit is because it ran out of fuel.
Oh my!
And even on 3 cylinders, that car was still running.
That is one well-made vehicle. Good on you, Hyundai.
They were always very well made. They weren't very good when it comes to the body on them. But man, the stories with that car, God, I think there was. Yeah.
There might be another one that I'm remembering. Did
Which
you
one?
not have a black Firebird with the chicken on the hood?
That was my black Trans Am.
That was the very first car?
Yes, that was my very first car.
How do I remember that one? Because that must have been like when you were like, what, 19?
I think so.
And I was, I don't even know. How much younger am I? Like 6 or 7 years?
I remember we were still going. At the time, we were going down to Willow Beach still. And I think your dad had the brown Mercedes, I think. And Pedro's dad had that 6000 STE with the digital thing. And my dad had the regular one, right?
Yeah. That's insane. Did you also have a Subaru at some point?
No.
Okay. I think that was my dad, actually. I think my dad had a Subaru for a very, very short amount of time because I think one of the cars quit on him and he bought like an all-wheel drive Subaru. Or maybe it wasn't that he bought it. Maybe they loaned it to him while his Mercedes was in the shop or something like that.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't even remember. For myself, I never had a Subaru. I mean, I like them. I was never a Subaru guy for some reason. I don't know why. They're nice cars, though.
Yeah. So out of all those cars, I think I know what your answer is going to be. But if you could have one back, which one would it be?
Oh, man. Jesus, that's a tough one. What are we talking? Reliability? We're talking fun factor? What are we talking about?
Like if you had to pick a car for yourself, you can pick the reason.
God, I like all of them. It's a toss-up. It's a toss-up between... I mean, I had no attachments to the Trans Am. I mean, it was fun, but, I had no attachments to it whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of... there wasn't anything great about that vehicle. It's a toss-up between the 90 Talon and the Mustang.
The Mustang
89.
from Windsor, right?
No. My 89, my LX that I had.
The one that made you all kinds of money in the totally legal street racing.
Yeah, and I would say probably even between those two, I would say probably the Mustang. because that car there, I mean, like I have so much history, so many stories and stuff. I mean, I remember, even one time coming down the 400 and the stupid wiper motor quit on me. And I'm driving, it's raining and snowing. I can't see a darn thing in front of me. And I'm trying to clean the windows. I go along and I drive into the mechanic shop and he's like, oh, yeah, we'll just pull one out of a 1987 Ford Escort. It fits. And boom, there it is. I was back in business within like 20 minutes.
Oh, so wow. That's really good.
Yeah, so versatile. So I have to say, out of all my cars, I think probably that one I missed the most.
And what would be like, every kid has like their poster car growing up. What would have been yours?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. Well, I can tell you, like growing up, I had a lot of Mustangs. I was always fascinated with the darn thing. But I would say probably, an old Ferrari. Yeah. The Testarossa probably.
Oh, that's mine.
Yeah, the Lamborghini Countach. Even the old Porsches.
Diablos are really cool too.
Got Diablo. And believe it or not, for the longest time, for me, it was actually the Dodge Viper.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I think Jeff hates the Dodge Viper for some reason.
Apparently, so does everybody that's owned one.
Oh, that's owned one.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this much. My wife's cousin's got one, the very first generation Vipers, and he says it is the most ridiculous vehicle, period. Like, that thing is literally trying to kill you at every turn of the road. Yeah, it's that bad, So I've never driven one. I've never owned one, so I can't attest to that, but apparently so. But,
yeah, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind driving one or testing one. That's for sure. I think the last time I got in one, I could barely fit, so it wasn't ideal.
Yeah. No, they don't seem very comfortable at all.
Would you buy like a modern day Mustang?
No.
You're all about like the 80s and early 90s. Maybe not even early 90s. I guess early 90s.
You know what, then? I'll tell you something. I think the problem is companies try to mimic, old nostalgia with today's technology, and I don't think it works in a lot of cases. And I'm not saying that's the case for Ford, but I can tell you that I drove a 5-liter when I went down to Miami earlier this summer. Now, granted, it wasn't standard; it was automatic, but it was actually quite obnoxious, man. Like it's just loud and obnoxious, and it's still like it feels heavy, and it feels like just like. I don't know. It's big. It just didn't feel right, man. And I feel like the old Mustangs, like the '89 that I had, it's just simple, man. It's a stick shift, and a steering wheel, and a set of pedals.
Yeah.
And you got to drive it, man. And you got to drive it because if you don't, that tail end's gonna swing out on. Pray to God you know how to control it. Where these new cars,
everything's electronic,
right? You
don't feel connected to the road.
No, you don't. And to the point, even with my Genesis, it's rear-wheel drive. And, even with the traction control on, it spooked me a couple times. I turned the corner a little bit too quick, and it's like, ooh, this is strange.
Yeah.
So I've never turned the traction control off of it.
Wow.
Because I don't know what it will do. Yeah. But I should one of these days.
Yeah, why not? It's always it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, there was other cars too that you had, but I guess those were the fun ones because you did have like other, like you had your Altimas and you had Ford Escapes.
Yeah, I mean those were the Dodge Journeys, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you had the F-150.
I did. Well, yeah, I had a couple of trucks as well. I mean, my daily drivers, you know what I mean? It's nothing really to write home about. But I guess in some sense, I've driven a lot of cars too over the years. I've got, the joke is at the Nissan dealership where I bought and serviced my Altimas that I've driven pretty much like every Nissan, vehicle there is to offer. So everyone kind of comes to me, hey, what do you think about this vehicle? So
speaking of Nissan, I'm surprised you never ended up getting like a 300 ZX or something. Because I could see you in one of those for sure.
I've always liked the 300 ZX. I had a friend of mine at the time. His dad had a very old 300 ZX, and it was a turbo model. And it was a very nice car. It was all digital. It was beautiful, but it's, they were problematic. And the old 300 twin turbos, they were expensive, man. Like, you got to remember, the 300 twin turbo was probably I would say competitor car to that would have been the Dodge Stealth twin turbo.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mitsubishi 3000 I think GT twin turbo. Those were like kind of like neck and neck. Those sort of three vehicles. And they were very expensive back then.
Yeah.
So for a guy working at a hardware store,
Right.
couldn't really afford one.
That's true.
But nice vehicles.
Yeah. So that was a whole lot of vehicles, a whole lot of Talons, a whole lot of illegal activity that was mentioned. Before we go though, I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is for you, Serge, because you were mentioning like the 90s street racing and stuff. There's actually a documentary about Toronto street racing in the 90s.
Really?
There is, yeah. And I bet you would probably recognize some of these guys. I'm trying to find a good link for it. And if I find a good link, I'll put it in the description as well.
Please. I'd like to look at it.
Yeah. Okay, wait a minute. I think I found it. Oh man, the video looked like it was shot on a really rotten potato.
Oh, well, yeah, it was probably back in the 90s.
Yeah, no, it was done by A&E. And it was done, I think it was 1998, but it looks so bad, the video. I got to find it.
Really?
And then I'll try to put a link in the description. If not, maybe you guys can find it. It's an A&E documentary about street racing in Toronto specifically. So,
I'd like to check it out for sure. Yeah,
should be a fun one to watch.
Brings back so many memories. That's for sure.
So thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
This was a lot of fun. All you people listening, myfirstcar.net for all your My First Car needs. You can go out and check out all the things. We post links to the vehicles of each guest that we have on the website as well. So if you wanted to look at Serge's many vehicles, you can go and check those out. I'm still flabbergasted by the fact that Firebird was your first vehicle, because I feel like I would have been too young to remember that, but I guess I wasn't.
You got to remember that there was always, and I think we talked about this probably in the first episode of our own podcast that we did a while back. I was always fascinated as a kid with the Knight Rider TV show. So it was only inevitable, when I came to Canada back in '88, that was one of the vehicles I saw on the road was a Trans Am. So it's like, it's a kid's dream, you know? And I sort of became fascinated with trying to own one, and that's how the whole thing started. But again, it wasn't intended to be like a daily driver. It was intended to be just kind of like relive the Knight Rider TV series type of thing,
right?
Which didn't pan out too well, but that's another story.
Yeah.
but yeah, so that was my first car.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening. I guess we'll be back next time with 100% more Jeff because he wasn't here today. Poor Jeff. We miss him. Hope you guys enjoy your holiday season, and we'll see you when we see you, I guess. No predictions on when we'll be back with the next episode because the holidays can get very busy for everybody. Thanks, Serge, for joining us, and maybe you'll come back and talk to Jeff about Talons one day.
I would love to, and I'll teach him a thing or two.
There you go. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.